Finnegans Wake, Part 1, Episode 6. So who do you know tonight, ladies and gentlemen? The echo is where in the back of the woods, call him forth. Sean McIrowick, brief dragger, for the concern of Messrs. John Jameson and Song, rated 100 and thin per store hundred on this nightly quoque of the 12 apostrophes, set by Jocket McIrowick. He misunderstruck an aim for him allo of number 3 of them, and left his free natural riposte to 4 of them, in their own fine artful disorder. What second to none, Mither Rector and Maximost Bridges maker, was the first to rise taller through his bean's tail than the blue gum bua boa babon of the giganteous Wellingtonia sequoia, went nudie boots with trousers into a Lafayette when she was barely in her tricklies, was well known to clod a conciliation cap onto the esker of his hoose, sports a chain ganger's Albert solemnly over his Hollander's opulence, thought he weighed a new ton when there felled his first lap apple, gave the heinousness of choice to every night betwixt yesterdicks and to Mary's, had 7 successive colored Sarah bandmaids on the same big white drawing room hearthrug, is a Wilberforce to this hour at house as he was in Heather, pumped the Catholic wartree and shocked the Protestant boyne, killed his own hungry self in anger as a young man, found fodder for 5 when Almarkin rose go flooded. With a Irish tutor's Cornish made easy, voucher of roadables, toll of the road, bred many-headed stepsons for one leap your own daughter, is too funny for a fish, and has too much outside for an insect. Like a heptagon crystal, comprisms trues and phosphorus, is infinite swell and unfitting induments. Once was he shoveled, and once was he arsoned, and once was he inundered, and she hung him out to Bill Bailey. Has a quadrant in his tile to tell Toller cataclog it is, offers chances to long on, but stands up to leg before, found coal at the end of his harrow and moss roses behind the seams, made a fort out of his postern and wrote FERT on his buckler, is escape master in chief from all sorts of houting places. If he out-Herods against Barkers, to the Schulbred he acts whitely, was evacuated at the mere appearance of 3 Germans, and twice besieged by a sweep. From zoomorphology to omni-animalism, he is broached by the spin of a coin, towers an Eddystone amid the lampless, casting swan beams on the deep, threatens thunder upon malefactors, and sends whispers up Frau's frou-frous. When Duke Hookback Crook upsits his ass, booze-worthies jeer and junket, but they booze him ooze and baz his ass when he looks like Hunket Plunket. By so's and search a party on a lady of this city, business, reading newspaper, smoking cigar, arranging tumblers on table, eating meals, pleasure, etc., etc., pleasure, eating meals, arranging tumblers on table, smoking cigar, reading a newspaper, business. Minerals, wash and brush up, local views, juju toffee, comic and birthdays cards. Those were the D's, and he was their hero. Pink sunset shower, red clay cloud, sorrow or Sahara, oxhide or iron, arraigned and attainted, listed and lighted, pleaded and proved. Catches his check at Bank of Inganged and endorses his doom at Chapel Exit. Brain of the Franks, hand of the Christian, tongue of the North, commands to dinner and calls the bluff, has a block at Morgan's and a badache all the afternoon, plays Gehammerat when he's Ernst, but misses Mawsey when he's lusty. Walked as far as the head where he sat in state as the rump, shows early English trace marks in a marigold window with manigoled lights, a myrioscope, 2 remarkable piscines, and 3 well worth seeing ambries. Arches all portcullised, and his nave dates from dots. Is a horologe unstoppable, and the Ben of all bells. fuit ist inherit, and though he's mildew-stained, he's moldy-stoned, is a queer cuss on the forest, but plain member for Megalopolis, mountain mighty, fawn and fleetfoot, plank in our platform, blank in our scout horn. Hydal in Carrick-Gates he is enumerated, cold as an earl he counts. Ship-shaped phrase of bug-looking words with a form like the easing moments of graminivorous. To our dooms brought he law, our manors he made his will of, was an overgrind to the underground, an aqueduced for fiery throats, sends boys in socks a cough whooping when he lets forth his carbon oxide, and silk stockings show her shapings when he loses hose on hers. Stocks dry pewter for the ill people, and Pinkins pellets for all the pale. Gave his Monday foot to Miserius, her pinch to Anna Olivia, that superfine pigtail to Ceresia Serosia, and quid rise to Titius, Caius, and Sempronius. Made the man who had no notion of shopkeepers feel he'd rather play the duke than play the gentleman. Shot 2 quains and shook 3 cascals when he won his game of dwarfs. Fumes inwards like a strombolus till he smokes at both ends. Man mote be fire of him, womankind pitad. Shows 1 white drift of snow among the gorse growth of his crown, and a chaperon of repentance on that which shed gore. Pause and queeze. Triple bill. Went by metro for the polis and then hoved by. To the finders hail, woe you that seek, whom filth had plenished, dearth devoured. Huck is leading, Coco comes next, Emery tries for the flag. Condense the O'Bruen's polar pass at Newlyn to his own orchestra's accompaniment. Took place before the International Convention of Catholic Midwives and found stead before the Congress for the Study of Endo-National Calamities. Makes a delicious entree and finishes off the course between sweets and savories. Flouts for forecasts, flares for fines, and the fun of the fray on the fairground. Cleared out 365 idols to set up one all colossal for henwives hoping to have males. The Flahula, the grasping one, the kindler of paschal fire, forbids us our trespassers as we forgate him. The phoenix be his pyre, the Cineres his sire, piles big Pelium on little osses like the pillows of Hercules, has an Oedipus complex, and a drink the dregs kink. Worst meats for chumps, and cow Carlos for scullions. When he plies for a favor is very truly ours. 2 psychic espousals and 3 desertions, maybe matter of fact now, but was futter of might then. Catamole Hill, ex-mountain of flesh, was reared up by stress and sank under strain. Tank it up, dank it up, tells the tailor to his tout. Untoot sauce for a man, but a bit of thimble for a maid. Blimp blump, a dud letter, a sing-a-song a syllable, a byword, a sentence with surcease. Well stanzas can you see him, frail shall fall, was Hatch at Celebridge, but ejaculated a brood. As it gan in the beginnings, so wound up in a battle of boss. Roderick, 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 oh, you've gone the way of the Danes. Variously catalogued, regularly regrouped. A bush boy's holiday, a quacker's mating, a wench's sandbath, the same homo hetheris chicken lost egg as when solii airly blew ye. Real detonation, but false report. Spa mad, but insane. 500,000 via bogus census, but a no street houseman when Alfend is the handiest of all Andes and a most elegant spot to dump your hump. Hands a secession to the now patricious, but plumps plebmatically for the bloody old centuries, eats with doors open and ruts with gates closed. Some dub him Rothschild, and more limb him Rockefeller. Shows he's fly to both demi-fair, but tries to cover up his tracers. 7 dovecoats who claim to have Pigeonheim to his Homer. Smyrnion, Roebuck, Colonsray, Sea Point, Quayhouth, Ashtown, Rathenay, independent of the lordship of Chamberlain, acknowledging the rule of Rome. We saw thy farm at useful prime, Donald, reeks like Il Bel Paese, looks like Iceland's ear. Lodged at quat places, lived through taut rains, takes a zumbath for his weekend and a wazenap for his refreshment. After a good bout at stool ball, enjoys girafla, what never more missed and Colombo found. Believes in every man his own gold keeper, and in Africa for the full blacks. The arc of his drive was 40 full, and his stumps were pulled at 80. Boasts him to the thick enthused, the oldest creator in Ariania, and looks down on the Swiss family Collisons, whom he calls Les Nouvelles Roches. Though his heart, soul, and spirit turn to Ferrof times, his love, faith, and hope stick to futurism. Light leg lifters sense him souriance from afore, while boor brow benders curse him grummelance to his hindmost. Between you lasses and ye latst, glimpse of even, the lug his peak has, the look his pile, drinks tar and water for his asthma, and eats the unperishable sow to stave off regular rack. The beggars cloak them reclined about his paddy stool, the whores winking him as they walk their side. On Christian Mess at Advent Lodge, New Zealand, after a Lenti illness, the Reverend Mr. Easterling of Pentecostitis, no followers by bequest, fanfare all private. Gone where glory waits him, ball, bulletist, but not here yet, Maxwell Clark. Comminced under articles, but finished a Borgias. From the vat on the beer, through the board in the dark, to the bottle of the bawn, is R on the highest, but rowery his root, filled fanned of hackleberries, when as all was tuck and toss up for him as a youngster to fall foul of Hockenbeckers, wherein he had gauged the use of raisin. Adds aliments, does doles, reps rustics, tams turmoil, says seed enough for assemination, but sue skivvies on the sly. Learned to speak from hand to mouth till he could talk Irish with his eyes shut. Hacked his way through heck hawks, but hanged his help from there hereafters. Naltos and his leg, bin and balls, to say nothing a talk of Newcomen. The gleam of the glow of the shine of the sun through the dearth of the dearth on the blush of the brick of the wild vill of Barnhume has dust turned to brown. These died to tartan him, rue root, dulse, bracken, teasel, fuller's ash, sundew, and cress. Long gun, but not for cotton, stood his sharp assault of famine, but grew girther, and girther. He has 24 or so cousins germinating in the United States of America, and a namesake with an initial difference in the once kingdom of Poland. His first's a young rose, and his second's French-Egyptian, and his whole means a slump at Christie's. Forth of his pierced part came the woman of his dreams, blood thicker than water, last trade overseas. Bishop of Glintybrook, Earl of Hode, you and I are in him surrentered by brown buildings, Ellen's flea polpehops, but Wang Chang every time. He one was your of high big pipey boys, but fancy him as smoking fags, his at time of life. Mount of Mish, Mel of Moy, had 2 cardinal ventures and 3 capital sinks, has a peep in his pocketbook, and a packet boat in his keep, BVH, BLG, PPM, TDS, VBD, TCHLON. Is breakfast longer, diener, and super. As the streets were paved with cold, he felt his Tipperary, taught himself skating, and learned how to fall. Distinctly dirty, but rather a dear. Haveth chieftains everywhere, with mortar. Ostmond Effendi, Serge Padishaw. Basses too many, out Priam's all his parasites. First to the Fenians, Roy de Fenians. His tiara of scones was held unfillable till one Liam Foyle felled him in Westminster. was struck out of his sidon when he rode solely to Damascus, and to our appalling predicament brought as plagues from Budapest, put a match head on an aspen stalk, and set the living afire, speared the rod and spoiled the lightning, married with cakes and repunct with pleasure. Till he was buried, how happy was he, and he made the welkins ring with up macabre. God at the top of the staircase, carry on the mat of straw. The falsehood of a spindler web chokes the cave mouth of his unsightliness, but the nestlings that liven his leaf screen sing him a lover of our beauties. We strike hands over his bloodied war sheet, but we are pledged entirely to his green mantle. Our friend, Vike Legal, our swaran foy, under the 4 stones by his streams who vanished the wassail bowl at the joy of shells. Mora and Laura had a hill of a high time looking down on his confusion, till Firm look in readiness, forward spear, and the windfoot of Corach strewed the lake mist of Lago over the last of his fields. We darken for you, falterer, in the year of mourning, but will feel to the Duntwinkles when the streamy Morven light calls up the sunbeam. His striped pantaloons, his rather strange walk. Hereditatis columna erecta, hagion kitan eraphan, nods a nap for the nonce, but crows cheerio when they get ecumenical, is a simultaneous equator of eliminated integras when 3 upon 1 is by inspection improper, has the most conical hodpiece of confusionist hair on him, and that chachafious chin of his is like a footsie kungaloo around Tay Shantyland. He's as globeful as a gasometer of lithium and luridity, and he was thrice 10 annular years before he wallowed round Radiant Circos. The cable stone at the coping of his cabin is a canine constant, but only an American could approximate the epupriosity of his Atlas elongment. Stickler rights and lefts at Batterstown in his hunt for the boar, troth, but made his end with the motorheads that came at him in Camlin Street. A Hannibal in exhaustive conflict, an Otho to return, burning body to eager air on melting mountain and wooing wave. We go into him sleepy children, we come out of him strucklers for life. He divested to save from the Mrs. Drownings, their rival queens, while Grimshaw, Bragshaw, and Benshaw made off with his store and clothes. Taxed and raided, licensed and granted. His 3-faced stonehead was found on a White Horse Hill, and the print of his costless feet is seen in the goat's grass circle. Pull the blind, told the deaf, and called dumb, lame, and halty. Miraculone, monstructuline, led the uplaws at the creation, and hissed a snake charmer off her stays. Hounded became haunter, hunter became fox, harrier, marrier, terrier, tav. Olaf the oxman, Thorker the tortable. You feel he is Vespasian, yet you think of him as Aurelius. Bougamore, traductory, socialist, commonizer, made a summer assault on our shores, and Bigitty got his sands full. First he shot down Raglan Road, and then he tore up Marlborough Place. Cromlech Height and Cromwell Hill were his far-famed feet rests when our lurches lout let free into the larbour beloved. Mareschaled his ward moats and delimited the main, netted before nibbling, can scarce turn a scale, but grossed after meals weighs a town in himself. Banaba prayed for his conversion. Burla missed that grand old voice. A colossus among cabbages, the Melaran citron of fruits, larger than life, doughtier than death. Grand Turco, Orig Fornament, Laxambulger, Leperlin, the sparkle of his genial fancy, the depth of his calm sagacity, the clearness of his spotless honor, the flow of his boundless benevolence. Our family fur-bearer, our tribal turnpike. Quarry was he invincible, and cur was he burked. Partitioned Erskine United Irishman, He took his fig at his own mether, but she tested a bit gorky. And as for the salmon, he was coming up in him all life long. Come, Eiler Dick Heckleberry and Sawyer thee, Warden, silent as the bee and honey, stark as the breath on Hauk, Costello, Kinsella, Mahoney, Moran, though you rope Umreek, your home ruler is Dan. Figure right, he is hoisted by the scurve of his shaggy neck. Figure left, he is rationed in isobaric patties among the crew. One asks, was he poisoned? One thinks, how much did he leave? Ex-gardener, Reisengeberger, fitted up with planturous existences, would make Rosie O'Grady mites little hoes. Taut sheets and scuppers awash, but the oiled silk milk Lieberspet mix his aquascutum. The enjoyment he took in K women, the employment he gave to G men, sponsor to a squad of piercers, ally to a host of Raleighs, against lightning, explosion, fire, earthquake, flood, whirlwind, burglary, third party, rot, loss of cash, loss of credit, impact of vehicles, can rant as grave as oxtail soup, and chat as gay as a Porto flippant, is unhesitant in his unionism, and yet a bigoted nationalist. Sylvia Cola is shy of him. Matros and Hosens knows the joke, shows the sinews of peace in his chest of wars. Five home, 939 years of copyhold, is all days open for Ptolemy Polity's sake when he's not sometimes closed for the love of Janus. Sucks life's elixir from the petty pickles of the Jewess and rules in silks if any popeling runs down the Huguenots. Rummaport, Walsley, Ubermarschall, Blauker, and Supercharger, Monsieur Ducrot, Mr. Mudson, Master Gardner. To one, he's just Paunch and Judex, to another, full of beans and brains. Hallucination, coachman, ectoplasm. Passed for Baba Black Sheep till he grew white woolly. Was dramatized by Macmilligan's daughter and put to music by one Schubart. All Fitzpatricks in his emirate remember him. The boys of Wedford hail him Baboo. Indanified himself with borough tribute and was shanked publicly to Brigstall. Was given the light in dry orchachafs and entombed in threeplexes. His likeness is in terracute, and he giveth rest to the rainbowed. Libriety, fraternity, and quality. His reverse makes a virtue of necessity, while his obverse mars a mother by invention. Beskilk his gunnel, and he's the second imperial, untie points, unhook tenters, and he's lath and plaster, calls upon all thing when he fails to appeal to Echavos. Bassidens, Ardry, Conch Semna, Rex Regulorum. Stood into Demouth, then backed broadside on Balaclava. Either El Dorado or Ultimatoli, a kraal of foul-fewed firers, a crawl of 5 pubs, laid out lashings of laveries to hunt down his family ancestors, and then pled double trouble or quick quits to hush the buckers up, threw peblets for luck over one sodden shoulder, and dragooned Peepled's arm to their teeth. Pept as Gaudio Gambrinus, grim as Potter the Grave, ace of hearts, deuce of diamonds, trouble of clubs, fair of spades, cumbrum, twinice nurses for a drum, but tre to uno tips the scale. Reeled the title roll opposite a brace of girdles in silver on the screen, but was sequenced from the set as crookback by the even more titulars Rick, Dave, and Barry. He can get on as early as the 22nd of Mars, but occasionally he doesn't come off before Virgin Tinquinque Germinal. His Indian name is Hapapuzis Ojibwe, and his number in arithmosophy is the stars of the plow. Took weapon in the province of the pike and let fling his line on Elwick. Moves in vicious cycles. yet renews the same. The drain rats bless his offals, while the park birds curse his floodlights. Portobello Equeducta Terracotta Percorello. He pours into the soft-clad Shelbourne the hard cash earned in Watling Street. His birth proved accidental, shows his death its grave mistake. Brought us giant ivy from the land of Yonkers, and be withered Apostolopolis with the gale of his gall. While satisfied that soft, youthful, bright, matchless girls should bosom into fine, silk-clad, joyous, blooming young women, is not so pleased that heavy swearsome, strong-smelling, irregular-shaped men should blot out active, handsome, well-formed, frank-eyed boys. Herald Harry fair, off the wheat, husband your aunt and endow your nepos. Hearken, but hush it, screen him and see. Time is an archbishopric. Time was a tradesman's entrance. Beckburn brooked with wath, scale scarred by scow. His rainfall is a couple of knee-highs, while his meanst grass temperature marked 3 in the shade. Is the melting point of snow and the bubbling place of alcohol, has a tussle with the trolls, and then does himself justice. Hinted at in the eschatological chapters of Humphrey's Justesse of the J.P.'s, and hunted for by Thebanry censors who sniff there's something behind the bug of the deaf. The king was in his Cornwall, making marks o' Murray. The queen was steep in Armber, feeling fain and furry. The maids was midst the hawthorn, shoring up the hose. Out pimps the blackguard's pomp, and pump gun they goes. To all his foretellers he reared a stone, and for all his come-ethers he planted a tree. 40 acres, 60 miles, white stripe, red stripe, washes his fleet in Annoch water. Who missed a porter, so what shall he do? For he wanted to sit for Pimlico, but they caught him to stand for Sioux. Dutch Lord, o'er ours. Headmound, king and martyr, Dunstung in the east, Peter Laporte and Petrin, Bart the Great by the exchange. He hastens towards dame's troth and wedding hand like the Prince of Orange and Nassau, while he has Trinity left behind him, like Boldbeggar, Bill the Bustonley. Brow of a hazelwood, pool in the dark. Changes Blowicks into bullocks, and a well of Artesia into a bird of Arabia. The handwriting on his face wall, the crypto concoid postatoma in his expressions. His birth spot lies beyond the Hellespont, and his burial plot in the pleasant little field. Is the eldest kiosk on the peninsula, and the unguist hostel in St. Scholarland, walked many hundreds and many score miles of streets, and lit thousands in one nightlights in hectares of windows. His great white cloak lies on 15 acres, and his little white horse decks by dozens our doors. Oh, sorrow the sail, and woe the rudder that were set for Mary Quay. His sons the Huns, his darters the Tartars, are plenty here today, who repulsed from his burst the bomb bolts of Ostenton, and falchioned each flash down Saduc in the deep. A personal problem, a locative enigma, upright one, vehicule of arcanization in the field, lying chap, flood supplier of seliculation through ebb lanes. A part of the whole as a port for a whale. Dear Hewitt Costello Equerry, we're delighted with our outing and are looking backwards to an early summers from rhododendrons. Is above the seed fruit level and outside the leguminiferous zone. When older links lock older hearts, then he'll resemble she. Can be built with glue and clippings, scrawled or voided on a buttress. The Night Express sings his story, the song of sparrow notes on his stave of wires. He crawls with lice, he swarms with saggarts. is as quiet as a mersk, but can be as noisy as a synagogue. Was Dillman when his date was palmy, and Mudlin when his nut was cracked. Suck up the cease, lep laud at ease, one lip on his lap and one cushion his crease. His porter has a mighty grasp, and his Baxter's the boon of broad white. As far as wind dries and rain eats and sun turns and water bounds, he is exalted and depressed, assembled and asundered. Go away, we are deluded. Come back, we are disgusted. Board the Ostrov, lapped the Inferus, swam the Mabel, and fleur the Moil. Like fat, like tallow, of greasefulness, yea, of dripping gracefulness. Did not say to the old, did not say to the scorbutic. He has founded a house, Uru, a house he has founded, to which he has assigned its fate. Bears a raven gulant on a field duive, rused the halo off his varlet when he appeared to his she-cook as haycock, emmet, borrow, toro, ostrich, mangy, and skunk, pressed the beer of ailed age out of the nettles of rashness, put a roof on the lodge for him, and a cook in his pot pro homo, was dapifer then, panser censor then, hortiflex magnus. The topes that tippled on him, the types that toppled off him, still starts our hares, yet gates our goat, pocketbook, packet boat, gap man, gun run, the light of other days, dire, dreary darkness, our awful dad, timor of tortor, puzzling, startling, shocking, nay, perturbing, went puffing from king's brew to new customs, doffing the gibbous off him to every breach of all size. With pa's new heft and papa's new helve, he's papa's old cutlass, papa left us. When young-headed, old-shouldered, and middleish neck aged about, collar herring every daily, turgid tarpon overnight. See Lorient, the chameleon that changed endocrine history by living his loaf with 40 bannocks. She drove him dafe, till he driv her blind up. The pigeons, doves be perchin' all over him one day on Bale's Bridge, and the ravens do be pitching their dark nets after him the next night behind Coningston's arbor. Tranche of the rep, comf of the priv, prosp of the pub. His head would its ideal if his feet are barely clay. He crashed in the hollow of the park, trees down, as he soared in the vacuum of the phoenix stones up. Looks like a molten bolter, and sounds like a rude word. The mountain view, some lumen pale around a lamp of succor in boiling water. 3 shots of putty at up, blup, saddle. Made up to Miss McCormick, Neil McCarthy, who made off with Darley Dermot, swank and swarthy. Once diamond cut garnet, now damnet cuts grawny. You might find him at the Florence, but watch out for him in Wynn's Hotel. There's his how, and where's his leaker, and here lays his be quiet harse, deep. Sweet Albione, likeliest villain of the place. Henry Canterell Cochrane, egotisters limitated. We take our teas and freeze our fleas round Saturn's mounted foot, built the Lund's Kirk, and destroyed the church's land. Who guesses title grabs his deeds. Fletch and Pretties, fashion chaps, artful Duke of Wilsley, Hugglebelly's funeral, cook, calicac, heard in camera and excruciated, boon when with benches billeted, ban if buckshot back shattered, heaven gendered, chaos fetid, earthborn. His father presumptively plowed it deep on overtime, and his mother, as all events must have travailed her fair share. A footprint on the megacene, hetman unhorsed by searing sand, honorary captain of the extemporized fire brigade, reported to be friendly with the police. The door is still open. The old stock collar is coming back, not forgetting the time you laughed at Elder Charterhouse's duck-white pants And the way you said the whole township can see his hairy legs? By the stealth of a curse, her auburn tress abaft his nape she hung. When his kettle became a hearth scaldus, our Thorsetites set their lamprey lamp-fryer. His year letter, concocted by master hands of assays, his hallmark imposed by the standard of wrought plate, a pair of pectorals, and a triple screen to get a wind up, lights his pipe with a rosin tree, and hires a tow horse to haul his shoes, cures slavey scurvy, breaks baron's boils, called to sell polish and was found later in a bedroom, has his seat of justice, his house of mercy, his corn copious, and his stacks of rye. Prospector, he had a rook shack. Retrospector, he holds the Holpen stake. Won the freedom of New York for the minds of Yugoslaves, acts active, peddles in passivism, and is a gorgon of self-righteousness, pours a laugh's worth of his ill formation over a farm's worth of salt, half heard the single maiden speech Labelle spun to her grand mount, and hold a lifetime by his ain fireside, wondering, was it Hebrew set to hymnal tones, or the quicksilver song of quaternions? His troubles may be over, but his doubles have still to come. The lobster pot that crabbed our keel, the garden pet that spoiled our squeezed peas. He stands in a lovely park, sees not far, importunate towns of X, Y, and Z are easily overreached, is an excrescence to civilized humanity, and but a wart on Europe. Wanna made sing signs to sound sense, and yet he wanna get all his flesh new made mots truly plural and plausible, has excisively large rings, and is uncustomarily perfumed. Lusteth ath he listeth, the clear withpa of a Thamith, is a prince of the Fingalian in a Hiberniad of hoolies, has a Hodge to weary him, and a Frenchie to curry him, and a Brabant son for his beater, and a Fritz at a switch. Was waylaid of a Parker, and beshotten by a Buckley, kicks lintels when he's cuppy, and casts Jacob's arrowroots, dime after dime, to pour waif-strays on the parish. Reads the charms of H.C. Anderson all the weeks of his evening, and the crimes of Ivan the Terrible every strong day morn. Soaps you soft to your face, and slaps himself when he's baddened. Owns the bulgiest bung barrel that ever was tip-tapped in the privacy of the Mullingar Inn, was born with a new silver tongue in his mouth, and went round the coast of iron with his lift hand to the scene, raised but 2 fingers, and yet smelt it would day. For whom it is easier to found a sea in Eblana than for I or you to find a double tie in Dumsterdamp. To live with whom is a life mayor, and to know whom a liberal education. Was dipped in hoily olives, and chrismed in St. O'Toole's. Hears cricket on the earth, but annoys the life out of predicants. Still turns the dirk's ear of Darius to the now thoroughly infuriated one of God. Made man with juts that jerk, and minted money mong many. Likes a 6-a-cup pudding when he's come home, sweet home. Has come through all the eras of lives adventure, from moonshine and champagne down to clouts and pottled porter. Willem the First, Heinrich the Oath, Charles the Second, Richard the Third. If a mandrake shrieked to convultures at last surviving his birth, the wabe duck will wail bitterly over the rotter's resurrection. Loses weight in the moonlight, but girds girder by the sundawn. With one touch of nature, set a veiled world a grin, and went within a sheet of tissue paper of the option of 3 goals. Who could see at one blick a salmon taken with a lance, hunters pursuing a doe, a swallow ship in full sail, a white rogue lifting a host, faced flappery like old King Canute, and turned his back like Cincinnatus, is a farfer and more far, and a whore father, naked bucker, in villas old as new, squats a quart and cracks a quaint when it's flagging in town, and on haven, blows whiskey round his summit, but states stout upon his foodles, stutters 40 falls, and goes mad entirely when he's waked, is Tim to the early morn, and Tomb to the morning night, and he had the best bun-baked bricks in bold Babylon for his pitching plays he'd be lost for the want of his one wobblin' wall. Answer, Finn McCool. 2. Does your mother know your Mike? Answer, when I turn me optics from such urban prospects, 'tis my filial's bosom doth behold with pride that pontificator and circumvallator with his damned knight garrulous slipped by his side. And alive, the lisp of her, 'twould Grig mountains whisper her, and the bergs of Iceland melt in waves of fire, and her spoon me spondies and her dirkle me on knees make the rageous ocean kneel and quaff a lyre. If Dan's Dane, Anne's dirty. If he's plain, she's purty. If he's fain, she's flirty with her auburn streams and her coy cajoleries and her dabbling drolleries, for to rouse his rudder up or to drench his dreams. If hot Hammurabi or cold Ecclesiastes could espy her pranklings, they'd burst bounds again and renounce their ruings and denounce their doings forever and ever and a night. Amen. 3. Which title is the true-to-type motto in lieu for that tick-for-tack attachment painted with one darkness, where a snake is under clover and birds a-prowl are in the rookeries, and a Magda went to monkey's house, and a river pard was spotted, which is not witchcraft war art, nor Osterholm dryschluss, nor Haroldsby grocer, nor Vatican ventner, no houseboat and hive, not knocks at a bell, not Ophanex Colprince, not one square of Brumiec, not Ablon Downs, not Ledacer Lemieux, not Benjamin's Lay, not Tholomew's Waddington, not Antwerp, not Musca, not Correy's, not Weir's, not the Arch, not the Smug, not the Dutch House, not the Uval, nothing grand, nothing splendid, grat or splettel, neither erat est erat, nor non mici sed Lucifero? Answer, thine obesity, O civilian, hits the felicitude of our orb. 4. What Irish capital city, a day, o day, of 2 syllables and 6 letters, with a Deltic origin and a nuinous end, dust, O dust, can boast of having A, the most extensive public park in the world, B, the most expensive brewing industry in the world, C, the most expansive peopling thoroughfare in the world, D, the most philohippic theobibus population in the world, and harmonize your abeceded responses. Answer, A, Belfast. And when you'll hear the gold hammers of my heart, my floxy loss, bing-banging again the ribs of your resistance, and the tenderbolts of my rivets working to your distraction, you'll be shivering with all your dinful sobs when we'll go riding a cope o' curly, you with your orange garland and me with my conny cordial, down the grey sways of rollicking into the waters of wetted life. B, Dork. And sure, where can you have such good old chimes anywhere, and lave you as on the mash, and how 'tis I would be engaging you with my plovery soft accents, and descanting up over the scene beyonder me of your loose vines and their harafall, with them 2 loving loofs braceleting the slims of your ankles, and your mouth's flower rose and sinking after the soapstone of silvery speech. C, Nublid. Isha, why wouldn't we be happy of Orneen on the mill's money? He'll soon be leaving you as soon as I've me own Brookline George and Mansion's lawn to recruit upon, by Dr. Cheek's special orders, and my copper's panful of soybeans, an Irish in my east hand, and a James Gate in my west, after all the arrears and airy booze of comparative and bottled history, and your good self churning over the new-leaved butter, more power to you. The choicest and the cheapest from Atlanta to Oconee will all be drowsing in the garden. D. Dalway. I hooked my thoroughgoing trotty the first down Spanish Place, Mayo. I make toom, I take. Sligo sleek, but Galway's grace. Holy eel and sainted salmon, chucking chub and ducking dace. Rhode Island's not your equal, says she, lepping half the lane. A, B, C, D. A bell, and Shaldal steep bell, and Bilgom Masplin, prismost people. Shand praise, goness, our faced moan people, our prame shandeepen, payname me feepence, moi ne non equal. 5. What slags of a lochled would retin smutty flesks, empt out old mans, milk vicious gate, scare off Jack and Jills for a tittle anding, smooth prink waste papish pastures, insides man outsiders angel, sprink dirted water around village, newses, toboggan and Swedes, plain general kept, louden on the kirkpeel, foot treats given to malifieds, outshriek, yelp, yelp, nor his hair after buglars, might underhold 3 barnets, puts polish crotty bots, night coover all fire glims, serves time till baz, grindstone his kniveses, fullest borted, lewd man of the method of girdliness, perchance he meows and then sits in the sport wagon. XWCA on ZWCU. Doorsteps Limited, or Bay Windows Brothers, Swabber preferred. Walter Clausetters and Sons, with the H.E. Chimneys Company, to not screeve will, unadvises, be bacon or stable hand, must be gripeful standingly Irish language, Jublender or North Quain bigger preferred, all duties, kind rights, family feud, outings 5, may get ernst, no get cumbitch, profusional drink lords to please abstain. He is fatherlow sound-digged in mood-minded person, but ale Connorman, nay, that must he, isn't? Answer, poor old Joe. 6. What means the saloon slogan, summon in the house sweep Dinah? Answer, tuck. Glory, bit of the sales of cloth now, and I have to beeswax the bringing in all the clove of the porks to us. How I thought I knew his stain on the flour, if me ask, and Can could speak, and he called me by my midden name, Tick. I am your honey sugar. What, the bay, and who brook the dandelies, and who's seen the black cullen jam for tomorrow's big picnic? I hope it'll pour. Praise the climate of all Ireland. I heard the grackles, and I skimming the crock on all your sandwiches, 5 per leg per drake. Took. And who ate the last of the goose bellies that was molding from measliest years? And who left that there? And who put that here? And who let the Kilkenny stale the chump? Tech. And who was it? You was it, prop the pot in the yard. And what in the name of Saint Luke are you rubbing in the side of the floor of the lobby with? Shite. Will you have a plateful? Talk. 7. Who are those component partners of your societate? The door boy, the cleaner, the soldier, the crook, the squeezer, the lounger, the curman, the tourabout, the mushroom sniffer, the bleak-a-blue tramp, the fun powther plother, the Christy man's boxer, from the Pré Salé and Donnybrook Prater and Roebuck's Campos and the ager around town, and Crumglen's grassy, but Kimmage's champ and Ashtown fields and Cabra fields and Finglas fields and Santry fields, and the fields of Rahenny and their fails and Baldoyle, to them who are latecomers all the years round by anticipation, are the porters of the passions, in virtue of retroratiocination, and contributing their confligent controversies of differentiation, unify their voxes in a vote of vaticination, who crunch the crust of comfort due to depredation, drain the mead from misery to incur intoxication, condone every evil by practical justification, and condemn any good to its own gratification, who are ruled, roped, duped, and driven by those Numen daemons, the fee keepers at their laws, nightly consternation, fortnightly fornication, monthly misericordation, and omniannual recreation, Doyles when they deliberate, but Sullivans when they are swordsed. Matey, Tady, Simon, Jorn, Peter, Andy, Barty, Philly, Jamesy Moore, and Tom, Matt, and Jakes McCarthy. Answer, the Morpheos. Eight. And how are your Maggies? Answer, they were loving. They love laughing. They laugh weeping. They weep smelling. They smell smiling. They smile hating. They hate thinking. They think feeling. They feel tempting. They tempt daring. They dare waiting. They wait taking. They take thanking. They thank seeking. As born forlorn and lord of love, to live and wive by wile and rile, by rule of ruse, neath rose and hose, hold home. Yet cometh elopier, coach and four, sweet peck at my heart, picks one man more. 9. Now, to be on anew and basking again in the panorama of all floors of speech, if a human being, duly fatigued by his deity and the sooty, having plenty off time in his gouty hands and vacance of space at his sleepish feet, and as hapless behind the dreams of accuracy as any Camelot prince of Denmark, were at this actual futural preteriting instant in the states of suspensive examination, accorded throughout the eye of a noodle, with an ear-sighted view of old Copenhagen, with all the ingredient and egregient whites and ways to which in the curse of his persistence the course of his Tory will had been having recourses, the reverberation of not cracking awes, the reconjugation of node-binding eyes, the redissolutingness of mind-moltered ease, and the thereby hang of the whole of it, could such a nun, whiles even led come silences to come lie withers, until in tempestuous knocks could catch the gal cry and spot Lucan's dawn, by hold of one's what is main, and why 'tis twain, how once met melts in t'other, once pointings, the sap rising, the folds falling, the nimb now nihilant round the girly head, so becoming, the restless in the womb, all the rivals to all say, shake again, oh disaster, shake a loose, ah, how starring. But Heng's got a bit of horse's nose, and Jeff's got the signs of ham round his mouth, and the bow that spun beautiful pails as it palls, what rose rude and outrageous grows gelb and green, blue out the end of it, violets dyed. Then what would that far-gazer seem self to seem seeming of dim it all? Answer, a kaleidoscape. 10. What bitters love but yearning? What sour love much but a brief burning, till she that draws doth smoke return? Answer, I know, Pipette, of course, dear, but listen, precious. Thanks, pet, those are lovely, Pituette, delicious, but mind the wind, sweet. What exquisite hands you have, you angel, if you didn't gnaw your nails. Isn't it a wonder you're not ashamed of me, you pig, you perfect little pigoline? I'll nudge you in a minute. I bet you use her best Persian smear off her vanity table to make them look so rose-top, glow-stop, no-stop. I know her. Slight me, would she? For every god I care. 3 creamings a day. The first during her shower and wipe off with tissue. Then after cleanup, and of course before retiring. Bemshal, when I think of that espos of a clan Carberry, the food brawler, of the Associationist Party with his black-leaded chest. Hello, Prendergast, that you, innkeeper? And all his 14 other full-back maulers of hurling stars, or whatever the dagos they are, baiting at my Lord Ornery's, just because they won the egg and spoon there, so ovally provincial at Baldole. My Eilish accent, he seed, makes his admiration. He is seeking an opening, and means to be first with me as his belle alliance. And do must nu play zeloso, so do tauros, such as Spanish. Stoop a little closer, feels. Delightsome simply, like Jolio and Romeo. I haven't felt so Turkish for ages and ages. Minds me of Squishes, the chocolate with a soul. Extraordinary. Why, what are they all? The mucky lot of them only. Shite. I wouldn't pay 3 hairpins for them. Pipette. That's right, hold it steady. Leg me pull. Pull. Come big to iron. Pull. What are you nudging for? No, I just thought you were. Listen, loveliest. Of course, it was too kind of you, Meeser, to remember my sighs and shockings, my often expressed wish, when you were wondering about my trousers. And before I forget it, don't forget, in your extensions to my personality, when knotting my remembrance tie, Shoe Week will be trotting back with red heels at the end of the moon. But look what the fool brought. Cabbage head. And I shall answer to gracious heaven, I'll always and always remind of snappy new garters, me being always the one for charms with me very best in proud and gloving, even if he was to be vermilion miles my youth to live on, the rubber-end Mr. Polking tone, the quonion fleshmonger who Mother Brown solicited me for unlawful converse with her mug of October, a pots on it, craking around in his old shank's axle like a crusty old corncrake. Earnaman, waterwag, terrier, blazer. I'm fine, thanks ever. Ha! Oh, mind you poo tickly. Shall I poom in my mouth? Mum. Funny spot to have a fingy. I'm terribly sorry, I swear to you I am. May you never manges may rot leprous offer of whatever a winking magus. May you never see me in my birthday pelts, seen so tutu, and that her blanc mange may rot leprous offer whatever winking magus I'll bet by your cut you go flirting after, with all the glass on her and the jumps in her stomware. Ha ha, I suspected she was. Sink her. May they fire her for a baronew. So she says, Tay for thee? Well, I saith, Thanks so much, and desired she might not take it amiss if I esteemed her but an odd. If I did ate tough turf, I'm not a mishy-mishy. Of course, I know, Pettist, you're so learningful and considerate in yourself, so friend of vegetables. You long, cold cat, you, please by acquiescer to make my acquaintance. Codling, snakelet, iciclist, my diaper has more life to it. Who drowned you in drears, man, or are you pale with ink? Did a weep get past the gates of your pride? My tread on the clover, sweetness? Yes, the buttercups told me. Hug me, damn it all, and I'll kiss you back to life, my peaches. I mean to make you suffer, meddler, and I don't care this fig for contempt of courting. That I chid you, sweet sir? You know I'm tender by my eye. Can't you read by dazzling ones? Through me true, bite my laughter, drink my tears. Pour into me volumes, spell me stark and spill me swooming. I just don't care what my thwarters think. Transname me loveliness, now and hear me for all times. I'd risk a policeman passing by, McGrath, or even that beggar of a boots at the post. The flame? Oh, pardone. That was what? Did you speak, Stuff? More postries from Chickspears with glee choral music or ejaculation from the garden of the soul. Of I belibe in the immoralities? Oh, you mean the strangle for love and the so evil of the prettiest? Yep, we open hap causeries in the home, and once upon a week I improve on myself. I'm so keen on that new free woman with novel inside. I'm always as tickled as can be over man in a surplus by the lady who pays the rates. But I'm as pious as possible. Let's root out Brim Stoker and give him the thrall of our lives. It's Dracula's night out. For creep's sake, don't make a flush. Draw the shades, curfew, and I'll beat any son of monk to love. Holy bug, how my highness would jump to make you flame your have a banan in two, when I'd run my burning torchlight through, to adorn me there and then cease to be, wherever for blossoms. You're hermy-jig if you had one. If I'm laughing with you, no, lovingest, I'm not so dying to take my rise out of you, adored, not in the very least. True as God made my mamma hip-length modesty coat-mouther. It's only because, the reason is, I'm only any girl, you lovely fellow of my dreams, and because old some booby is not a roundabout, my trysting of the tulipies, like that puff-pape bucking Davron a-soiling us behinds. What a nerve! He thinks that's what the vestry's for. How vain's that hope in cleric's heart, who still pursues the adulterous art? Cocksure that rusty gown of his will make fair Sue forget his phiz. Tame Schwips, blessed Margaret Bosses. I hope they threw away the mold, or else we'll have balls, hawsers, and soured mamplers with their medical assassinations all over the place. But hold hard till I've got my latchkey vote, and I'll teach him when to wear what women call ours. On account of the gloss of the glaison, has a brew bawbees is a booble. And because, you pluckless lankaloot, I hate the very thought of you. And because, dearling, of course, Adorus, I always meant for an engineer from the French college to be musband, nom d'engine, when we do, and contract with Enco Tenco Solver when you are married to reading and writing, which please business now won't be long, for he's so loopy on me. And I'm so lappy, like since the day he carried me from the boat, my savior of Eros, to the beach, and I left on his shoulder one fair hair to guide hand and mind to its softness. Ever so sorry. I beg your pardon. I was listening to every treasuried word I said fell from my dear Mott's tongue. Otherwise, how could I see what you were thinking of, our granny? Only I wondered if I threw out my shaving water. Anyway, here's my arm, pullet neck, gracefully yours. Move your mouth towards mine. More, preciousest, more on more. To please me, treasure. Don't be a, I'm not going to. Shh, nothing. A cry somewhere. Bye. I'm fly. Here, Pippi, under the limes. You know big tree are all against Greystone. They his hesitancy, grand old man. So chirrup, Stigolo, for the lug of Migo, the little pastor. I go you before, so, and you're at my apron stage. Shy as him, Dovey? Must forget there's an audience. I have been lost, angel. Cuddle ye, devil ye, it's our toot-a-toot. Here, sensation. Let them their whole 4 courtships. Let them Big Ball and his boozers 11 makes 12 territorials. The old sot's hole that wants wide streets to commission their nonsense in. At the Mitchells versus Nicholas. Aves, salve, aquae vales. And my waiting 20 classbirds sitting on their stiles. Let me finger their arithmetic, and you'll see if I'm self-taught. They're all of them out to please. Wait, in the name of and all the holly, and some the missile, and it's St. Ives, hoost, there's Ada, Bet, Celia, Delia, Ina, Fretta, Gilda, Hilda, Ita, Jess, Catty, Lou. They make me cough as sure as I read them. Mina, Nippa, Opsy, Paul, Queenie, Ruth, Saucy, Trix, Una, Vella, Wanda, Xenia, Iva, Zulma, Phoebe, Thelma, and me. The reformatory boys is going in for the church, so we've all come fast like the group suppers and caught lip solution from anti-providence under penancies for marital sins. When their bride was married, all my bells began to ting. A ring, a rose a ring, then everyone will hear of it. Whose wishes is the farther to my thoughts, but I'll plant them a poser for their nomenclator when they're out with the Daners during Chaperon Mall. Bright pigeons all over the world will fly with my mistletoe message round their love ribbon necks, and a crumb of my cake for each chasta diva. We keeps all in sundry papers. In the hammerlight, oh my darling. No, I swear to you, by Phipsborough Church Dome and St. Andre's Undershift, by all I hold secret from my world and in my underworld of nighties and naughties and all the other wonder worlds. Close your not must look. Now open, pet, your lips, pipette, like I used my sweet padded lipsibus with Dan Holohan of facetious memory taught me after the flannel dance, with the proof of love, up Smock Alley the first night he smelled powder, and I colored beneath my fan, pipette mia, when you learned me the linguo to melt. Whom would have ears like ours, the black-haired? Do you like that? Silencioso. Are you enjoying this same little me, my life, my love? Why do you like my whispering? Is it not divinely delicious? But ain't it baff for you? Mizzy, tell me till my thrill me comes. I will not break the seal. I am enjoying it still, I swear I am. Why do you prefer it in these dark nets, if why may ask, my sweetiekins? Shh, shh, long ears is flying. No, sweet assist, why would that annoy me? But don't. You want to be slapped for that. Your delighted lips, love, be careful. Mind my dove-time dress above all. It's golded, silvery, the newest sex-toned with princess effect. For Rutland blues got out of fashion. So, my precious. Oh, I can see the cost. Char, don't tell me. Why, the boy in Sheep's Lane knows that. If I sell whose, dears? Was I sold here, tears? You mean those conversation lozenges? How awful. The bold shame of me. I wouldn't, chickens. Not for all the Juliets in the twinkly way. I could snap them when I see them winking at me in bed. I did so, my intended, or was going to, or thinking of. Shh, don't start like that, you wretch. I thought you knew all and more, ye author, to explique to ones the significat of their exosystems with your mu nivulon lid. It's only another queer fish or other in Bryn Brew's damned old Truciorous River again. Go the wish-begoths, bless us and spare her, and give us rest from the bosso. Excuse me for swearing, love. I swear to the Sorisims on their trons of Ulian. I didn't mean to, by this Alpin armlet. Did you really never in all our Cantalong lives speak clothes to a girl's before? No, not even to the charmer maid? How marvelous! Of course I believe you, my own dear doting liest, when you tell me, as I'd love to. Oh, I'd love to. This, I must wis. Never that, ever. Or I can remember, dear streaming faces, you may go through me. Never in all my whole white life of my matchless and pair, or ever, for bitter be the fruit of this hour. With my whiteness I thee woo, and bind my silk breaths I thee bound. Always, amory, amor and more, till always thou lovest, so long as the locksmith laughs. 11. If you met on the binge a poor exiled from ailing, when the tune of his tremble shook Slimmy on shin, while his contrary raged in the week of his wailing, like a rugilant, pugilant lion o' Lynn. If he maundered in miserliness, plaining his plight, or played fox and lice, pricking and dropping his teeth, or wringing his handcuffs for peace, the blind blighter, praying deaf and dumb nostrums, fo thumbthinks to eath. If he wept while he leapt, and guffawed with a whimper, made cold blood a blue Monday, and no bones without fletch, taking kiss, cake, or kick with a suck, sigh, or a simper, a vil diffle to larn and a dibble to lech. If the fain shinner pegged you to shave his immartial, we skill mustard shoal with his ooh, hoo doo doo, broking wind that to whiles woe-made sin he was partial. We don't think, Jones, we'd care to this evening. Would you? Answer. No, blank ye. So you think I have impulsivism? Did they tell you I'm one of the 46th? And I suppose you heard I had a wag on my ears. And I suppose they told you too that my role of life is not natural. But before proceeding can conclusively confute this begging question, it would be far fitter for you, if you dare, to hesitate to consult with and consequentially attempt at my disposed sale of the same dime cash problem elsewhere, naturalistically, of course, from the blink point of so eminent a specialist. From it you will hear notice shot upon me for the first remarking you that the sophology of Bitson, while driving as under by a purely dime urge, is not without his cash characteristics, borrowed for its nonce ends from the fiery godmother Misfortune, who, the last time we had the pleasure we had our little recherche brush with, what? Shot? And as I further could have told you, as brisk as your DBC, behavioristically, paete with a coat of homoid icing, which is in reality only a done by chance ridiculization of the who and wears hairs theories of Weinstein. To put it all the more clumsily, the speech form is a mere surrogate, whilst the quality and tality, I shall express what you ought to mean by this with its proper when and where and why and how in the subsequent sentence, are alternative momentally harrogate and arrogate, as the gates may be. Talus is a word often abused by many passims. I am working out a quantum theory about it, for it is really most tantalizing state of affairs. A pessim may frequent you to say, have you been seeing much of Talus and Talus those times? Optimately meaning, will you put up at Brie of Irish? Or a lady eater may perhaps have casualized as you temptoed her a la sordine. Of your plates? Is Talus de Talus, the sword swallower who was on at the Criterium, the same Talus von Talus, the pens crusher, no funk you, who runs his duly mile? Or this is a perhaps cleaner example. At a recent post-vortex piece investigation of a determinized case of chronic spinosis, an extension lecturer on the ague, who out of matter of form was trying his Caesars, Drs. Het Ubeleft, borrowed the question, whys which suchmans talus qualis? To whom, as a fatter of mact, Dr. Gedanke of Stoutgirth, who was wiping his whistle, tersely retorted, well, thou beast museum of a whirl. Talus and talus originally mean the same thing. It's qualis. Professor Loie Bruller, though as I shall promptly prove, his whole account of this Sennacherib, as distinct from the Shalmaneser sanitational reforms, and of the Mr. Skeckles and Dr. Hyde's problem in the same connection, differs toto coelho from the fruit of my own investigations. though the reason I went to Jericho must remain for certain reasons a political secret, especially as I shall shortly be wanted in Coventry. I congratulate myself, for the same and other reasons, as being again hopelessly vitiated by what I have now resolved to call the dime and cash diamond fallacy. In his talked of confession, which recently met with such a leonine uproar on its escape after its confinement, why am I not born like a Gentile man, and why am I now so speakable about my own eatables? Fagin Baumblatt and Father, Budapest, 5688 AM, wholeheartedly takes off his gabber coat and wig, honest, draughty fellow, in his public interest, to make us see how, though, as he says, by all's will, the inception and the descent and the ends will of man is temporarily wrapped in obscenity, looking through at these accidents with the pharos-scope of television, this nightlife instrument needs still some subtractional betterment in the readjustment of the more refrangible angles to the squeals of this hypothesis on the outer tin sides. I can easily believe heartily in my own most spacious immensity as my own house and micromost cosm when I am reassured by ratio that the cube of my volumes is to the surfaces of their subjects as the sphericity of these globes. I am very pressing for a parliamentary motion this term, which, under my guidance, would establish the deleteriousness of decorousness in the morbidization of the modern man-about woman type. Is to the veracity of Fairy Nellie's vacuum. I need not anthropologize for any unintentional. I must here correct all that school of Neo-Italian or Paleo-Parisian school of tinkers and spanglers who say I'm wrong parce que out of revulsion from Romanitis I want to be. Downtrouting on my foes. Professor Levi Brulo, ED, of Sex Wyman Eitelnacki, finds, from experiments made by him with his Nuremberg eggs in the one hand, and the watches Kundran upon the oven, though it is ostensibly a case of Ket's rebellions cooling the Pope's back, because the number of queer faiths in weekly circulation will not be appreciably augmented by another slogging of my cupular clods. What the romantic in rags pines after, like all Tom Tompions haunting crevices for a deadbeat escapement, and what het importunes are mitleid for, in accordance with the mortadella tradition, is the poorest common guardian waste of time. His ever-present toes are always in retaliation out through his overpassed boots. Hear him squawk. Take heed to that loose swallower, how he bolo the bat. Tyro a torre, when Mullaki won a couple of colds, when we were stripping in number 3. I would like the neat drop that would malt in my mouth, but I fail to see when. I am purposely refraining from expounding the obvious fallacy as to the specific gravitates of the two deglutables implied, nor to the lapses liquid associated with the royal gorge, through students of mixed hydrostatics and pneumodipsics will, after some difficulties, grapple away with my meanings. Mirth and allure, as old Marcellus Cambrianus puts it, but on Professor Llewellys ap Briller's, FD, PhD's showings, the plea, if he pleads, is all posh and rubbage on a meliodontic scale, since his man's when is no other man's quandor. Mine, thank you? Well, for aught I care, for the contrary, the all is where in love as war, and the plain where me art soared you'd aisy raws a thunder from, and where I cling true, 'tis there I climb tree, and where innocent looks best, pick, there's holly in his eyes. As my explanations here are probably above your understandings, Ladle Brattons, though as augmentatively uncomparisoned as Cadwin, Cadwallon, and Calwanler, I shall revert to a more expletive method, which I frequently use when I have had to sermo with middle-class pupils. Imagine for my purpose that you are a squad of urchins, sniffly-nosed, gosling-necked, clothy-headed, tangled in your lacings, tingled in your pants, etc., et Cicero, and you, Bruno Nowlin, take your tongue out of your inkpot. As none of you knows Javanese, I will give all my easy-free translation of the old fabulous parable. Allaboy minor, take your head out of your satchel. Audi, Joe Peters. Ex Audi, facts. The mooks and the gripes. Genties and ladymen, full stoppers and semi-colonials, hybrids and lubbards. Eins within a space, and a very wide space it wast, won the mooks. The wonsomest wast all too lonely, Archum sits like broady oval, and a mooks he would a walking go. My hood, cries Anthony Romeo. So one grand summer evening, after a great morning, and his good supper of gammon and spittish, having flabbled his eyes, pillowed his nostrils, vacticinated his ears, and palliumed his throats, he put on his impermeable, seized his impugnable, harped on his crown, and stepped out of his immobile de rure albo, so called, because it was chock full of master plasters and had gorgeously let out gardens strewn with cascadas, pentecostacas, orthodox, and currycombs, and set off from Ludstown a spasso to see how badness was badness in the weirdest of all pensible ways. As he set off with his father's sword, his lancia spezzata, he was girded on, and with that between his legs and his tark heels, our once and only brag spear, he clanked to my clinking from Vito's the treetop, every inch of an immortal. He had not walked over a pentead pair of parsecs from his asylum, when at the turning of the Shinson lantern near St. Bavery's without his walls, he came, secunding to the 1/1th of the proposies amnis liminia permanent, upon the most unconsciously boggy-looking stream he ever locked his eyes with. Out of the Collins, it took a rise by daubing itself Ninon. It looked little, and it smelt of brown, and it thought in narrows, and it talked so shallow, and as it ran, it dribbled like any lively pearlet easy. My, me and me, little down dream, don't I love thee? And I declare, what was there on the yonder bank of the stream that would be a river, parched on a limb of the alum, boiled downright, but the gripes? And no doubt he was fit to be dried, for why had he not been having the juice of his times? His pips had been neatly all drowned on him. His pulps were charging odors every older minute. He was quickly forgetting the dresser's design on the flyleaf of his fronds, and he was quietly forgiving the bailiff's distrain onto the bulk side of his cul de pompe. In all his specious heavings, as belived by Optimus Maximus, the mooks had never seen his Dubville brother-in-law so nigh to a pickle. Adrian, that was the mook's now's assumpti nome, stuck still fizz-a-fizz to the gripes in an excessid of orignation, but all mooks must, to mood end, much as all rotes, osterways or wasters ways, and roaming run through room. Hic sorta stone, singularly illud, and on huck stone, Ceter sat, hook sate, which had filled quite preposterously, and by acclimatation to its fullest justatorium, and whereupon, with his unfallible encyclicing upon his all-oilable Deupetric of the Woist, and the athemis sprinkled pederect he always walked with, Deus dedit, cheek by jowl with his fisherman's blague, bellua triumphanes, his every way added to wallets collectium, for ye longer he leaved ye, broader he be taught of it, the fetter, the summy, and the hall it cost. It looked the first and last Michael-like likeness of Quartus the fifth, and Quintus the sixth, and Sixtus the seventh, giving all might sitting to Leo the faulty ninth. Good appetite us, Sir Mooks. How do you do it? Cheeped the gripes in a wary, wiggy, Maudolian voice, and the jackasses all within ball laughed and brayed for his intentions, for they knew their sly-toed Lowry now. I am Rarumonium, blessed to see you, my dear master. Will you not perhaps tell me everything, if you are pleased, sanity, all about Alni and Lithiel, and all in all about On and Lithius? Nay, think of it. O miserendissimest retemptor, a gripes. Rats, bellowed the mooks most telesphorously, the concionator, and the city musses and the zazimusses in their Roman houses quailed to hear his tardy noise at all, for you cannot make a silken nose out of a horse oar. Blast yourself for and your anathemy, inferiobus. No, hang you for an animal rural. I am superbly in my supremest pontiff. Abase you, baldy queens. Gather behind me, satraps. Rots. I am till infinity obliged with you, bawd the gripes, his wine having gone to his palfrey head. I am still always having a wish on all my extremities. By the watch, what is the time, pace? Figure it, the pining peaver, to a mooks. Ask my index, mund my Achilles, swell my obulum, wash up my nays, serene, answered the mooks, rapidly by turning Clement, Urban, Eugenius, and Celestian in the foremost of good groggery humors. Quote a whore, that is quite about what I came on my missions with my intentions, laudabiliter, to settle with you, Barbaroos. Let Thor be Orlog, let Pauline be Irene, let you be beaten, and let me be Los Angeles. Now measure your length, now estimate my capacity. Well, Sor, is this space of our couple of hours two-dimensional for you, temporizer? Will you give you up? Como? For it? Sancta potentia, you should have heard the voice that answered him. Cula Valsalina. I was just thinking upon that, sweet Mooksy, but for all the rime on my raisins, if I cannot make my submission, I cannot give you up, the gripes whimpered from nethermost of his wan hope. I shall as bound be withal so to seize it. My tumble, loudy bullocker is my own. My felicity is too fit in one stock end, and my special in excelsis, the bellowing things above. But I will never be able to tell your unoriousness. Here he near lost his limb, though my corked father was but a pseudo-waiter, whose o cloak you wear. Incredible. Well, here are the inevitable. Your temple, sus increbro, sempre excommunicambiam summers, to Gurdios in new robe, or to Carius in ashes, Nova Rome, my creature, believes. My building space in Leonine City is always to let to Leon-like men, the mooks in a most constorious allocution, pontifically with immediate jurisdiction, consistently concluded. What a crammer for the shipwrecked gripes. And I regret to proclaim that it is out of my temporal to help you from being killed by Inchies. What a thrust. As we first met each other, nowhere so airly. Poor little so-sieved, sub-quashed gripes. I begin to feel contemption for him. My side, thank the Cretals, is as safe as Mother Earth's houses, he continued. And I can see from my holy dome what it is to be wholly sane. Union, jocund be joined to walk. Parasis to say, crucicrux belongs to him who parases himself. And there I must leave you subject for the pressing. I can prove that against you. Wait a momentum, mine good enemy, or the gospel's not our star. I bet you this dozen odd, this voluminous dozen odd, quas primus, but 'tis bitter to compote my knowledge's fructose of tomes. Elevating, to give paint to his blick, his jeweled pederect to the almighty ceiling, he lucky struck blue-eyed out of a few should-be santillants a cloister of staraboots over maples, a Lucioli's in Theresa Street, and a stop sign before Sophie Barrett's. He gathered together the odds docents of his volumes, Greek, Latin, and Rosicrucian, unto the laps of his prolegs, into umfulth one scuppered, and sat about his widerproof. He proved it well, who on earth dry in dry-sick times, and preamient to cessus, to the extinction of Nicholas altogether, Nicholas Aloysius having been the once Gripes's pop-willed nimbum, by Euclidius and Exagoras and Mumpsven and Thumpson, by Erasmus and by Amenius, by Anacletus the Jew, and by Malachi the Augurer, and by the Capon's collection, and after that with Cheeky's gelatine and all-day brandy's formalon, he reproved it all together, when not in that order, sundering in some different order. After 330 and 100 times, by the binomial diagram and the Punic walls and the Ind, the Inkelspill legends and the Ruhr, the rule of the hoop and the blessings of expedience and the just, the jugacants of Pontius Pilax, and all the mummy scripts in six spokes junk room, and the chapters for the cunning of the chapters of the conning fox by tale. Well, that Muxius with prepossession and with proprocession, duplicitly and duplicitly was promulgating ipso facts and sad contras, this rascally Gripos, he had all but succeeded in monophysicking his ill subordinates. But Ausophilus, he had caught his base Semenionius sarcnectiers to come bucinate upon the syllipsises of his ospilouts, and the ekporusers of his Hagion Numax, to cineretherize with the bread-chestviousness of his sweet ovular Ducos, so farfully the logger thuds of his sacularies were fond at variance with the synodals of his Sampuliam, and his Babskist Nepo Grazimost got the hoof from his Philocles. After 1,000 yaws, O gripes, con my sheepskins, you will be belied to the world, and skate Mooks the pious. After 1,000 yours, answered Gripes the Gregory, be the coat of Machamed, yours may be still, O Mooks, more hot-heard. Us shall be chosen as the first of the last by the electress of Vale Hollow, observed the Mooks nobly. For the par the unicum of Eligiax, us am in our stabulary, and that is what Ruby and Roby fall for, bliss him. The pills, the nasal wash, Yardleys, the army man cut, as British as Bondstrict, and as straight cut as when that broken-arched traveler from Newsland, we, confused the Gripes limply, shall not even be the last of the first, we hope, when oust are visitated by the veiled horror. And he added, me are relying entirely, see the 43rd of Elizabeth, on the weightiness of Mere's breath, puffet, unsight bared, embouchure, relentless foe to social and business success. Hurry, Helene. It might have been a happy evening, but, and they vituperated each other, cantate caliber with the wildest ever wielded, since Tariestinus lashed Pissas Faltium. unicorn, ungulant, uvaloid, usquebec, and bullfully answered volleyball. Nuvoletta, in her light dress spun of sistine shimmers, was looking down on them, leaning over the banisters, and listening all she childlessly could. How she was brightened when Schuldrups in his globering hockskied his walking stock, and how she was overclused when these knobs on his swivel was make acting such a pulse of himself. She was alone. All her Nubiad companions were sleeping with the squirrels. Their miver, Mrs. Moonan, was off in the first quarter scrubbing the back steps of number 28. Fubber, that scanned, he was up in Norwood's soca parlor eating oceans of Woking's blemish. Nuvoletta listened as she reflected herself. Though the heavenly one with his constellatria and his emanation stood between. And she tried all she tried to make the mooks look up at her. But he was far too adioptously far-seeing. And to make the gripes hear how coy she could be, though he was much too schismatically auricular about his ends to heed her. But it was all Miles' vapor moist. Not even her faint reflection, Nouveau Lucia, could they toke their noses off their minds with the intrepified fate and bungless curiosity, were conclaved with Heliogabalus and Commodus and Enobarbarus and whatever the cardinal dickens they did, as their damprock of papers and bookstuffs said, as if that was their inspiration, as if theirs could diuperate her querendum, as if she would be third party to search on search proceedings. She tried all the winsome, wansome ways her four winds had taught her. She tossed her swumistallaciousness hair like La Princesse de la Petite Bretagne, and she rounded her mignon's arms like Mrs. Cornwallis West, and she smiled over herself like the beauty of the image of the pose of the daughter of the Queen of the Emperor of Ireland. And she sighed after herself, as were she born to bride with Tristis Tristior Tristissimus. But sweet Madeline, she might fair as well have carried her daisies worth to Florida. For the mooks, a dog-mad aconite, were not amused, and the gripes, a double-housed Catholic, was pinefully oblificent. I see, she sighed. There are menner. The sis of the wisp of the sigh of the soft sing of the stir at the ver grosso arundo of a long one in medias reeds, and shades began to glitter along the banks, greepsing, dusk unto dusk, and it was as gloaming could be in the waste of all peaceable worlds. Metamnesia was all sunami chloroform homebroom, Cytherea splain on Euland, Inemerus, and on Numeros. The mooks had a sound eyes right, but he could not all hear. The gripes had light ears left, yet he could but ill see. He ceased, tongue and trit, and it was never so ever so dusk of both of them. But still, Moo thought on the deeps of the unths, he would profound come the morocks, and still gry field of the scripes he would ascribe if by grace he had luck of snoops. Oh, how it was dusk. From Valley Maria to Gracia Plena, dormi must echo. Adieu, adieu. It was so dusk that the tears of night began to fall, first by ones and twos, then by threes and fours, at last by fives and sixes of sevens, for the tired ones were wecking as we weep now with them. Oh, 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 par la pluie. Then there came down to the thither bank a woman of no appearance, I believe she was a black with chills at her feet. And she gathered up his hoariness, the mooks notomorphily where he was spread, and carried him away to her invisible dwelling. That's heights, Aquila Rapax, for he was the holy sacred Solem in Pashup's bit of her Boshup's apron. So you see the mooks, he had reason as I knew, and you knew, and he knew all along. And there came down to the hither bank a woman to all important, though they say that she was comely, spite the cold in her heed. And for he was as like it as blow it to a hawker's bank, she plucked down the gripes, torn panicky autotone in anjou from his limb, and carried away its beatitubes with her to her unseen shiling, it is, Dorore Coeli. And so the poor gripes got wrong, for that is always how a gripes is, always was and always will be, and it was never so thoughtful of either of them, and there were left now an only elm tree and but a stone, poled with Petrus, seer but Saul, oh yes, and Nuvoletta, alas. Then Nuvoletta reflected for the last time in her life, in her little long life, and she made up all her myriads of drifting minds in one. She canceled all her engausements. She climbed over the banistars. She gave a childy, cloudy cry, "Nuée, nuée!" A light dress fluttered. She was gone. And into the river that had been a stream, for 1,000 of tears had gone on her and come on her, and she was stout and struck on dancing, and her muddied name was Mrs. Liffey. There fell a tear, a single tear, the loveliest of all tears. I mean, for those Krylov Fables fans who are keen on the pretty, common-face sort of thing you meet by Hope Harrods. For it was a lip tear, but the river tripped on her by and by, lapping, as though her heart was brook. Why, way, oh way, I so silly to be flowing, but I no canna stay. No applause, please. Bast. The Romscott Nattle Shaker will go round your circulation in diu dorsis. Allaboy, Major. I'll take your reactions in another place after themes, Nolan Brown. You may now leave the classroom. Joe Peters, Fox. As I have now successively explained to you my own natural-born rations, which are even in excise of my vaulty brain, ensure me that I am a mouth's more deserving case by genius. I feel in sympathos for my ever-devoted friend and half-fallow fan-washed Nakus Nakovich, darling gem, darling small fox, Horo's shoe. I could love that man like my own Ambo for being so belly cleaver, though he's an awful curry lass, and I must slave to methodiousness. I want him to go and live like a Theobald in charge of the Night Brigade on Tristan da Cunha, Isle of Man Overboard, where he'll make number 106 and be near inaccessible. The meeting of mahoganies be the waves, remembers me that this exposed site, though it pines for an umbrella of its own, and needs a shelter belt of the true service sort to keep its bowls clean. The weeping beaches, Pisea and Tilia, are in a wild state about it. Ought to be classified as cricket butt Willem, and as two nurserymen advisors suggested, under genus inexhaustible, when we refloat upon all the butternut, sweet gum, and manna ash, etc., which is so prevalent there, as if there was hawthorns and curragassa, which ought to look as plain as a lodgepole to anybody until we are introduced to that Pinot Toccata of Verni Rubius, where the Deodarte is pictured for us in a pure stand, which we do not doubt has a habitat of doing, but without those self-sown seedlings, which are a species of proof that the largest individual can occur at or in an olivation, such as Easter Conahillock, where it mixes with Fulth acacians and common sallies, and is tender. Vux populus, as we say in hickory-hockory. And I wish we had some more glasses of arbor vitae. Why wrote by the roadside or over alum-pot, alderman, white beaver, is Daccio. He ought to go away for a change of ideas, and he had a world of things to look back on. Do, sweet Daniel. If I weren't a Jones and myself, I'd elect myself to be his dolphin in the wilds below, because he is such a barefooted rubber with my super socks pulled over his face, which I published in my best back garden for the laetification of siderodromites and to the irony of the stars. You will say it is most un-English, and I shall hope to hear that you will not be wrong about it. But I further, feeling a bit husky in my truths. Will you please come over, and let us more mergeously to each other's down below our vices. I am underheard by old Billfaust. Wilsh is full of kirks. The Coolskittle is Philip Deblinite. Mr. Whist is there over beyond the Want-Not. Wilsh and Whist are a stick of thins under as Faust on the Deblinite. Scunosciuto estas preter la tapizo malgranda. The legas al scientia cambro, quelca foi functus, quelca foi shrumpus schultroi, hurian cael vi fartus, mia nigra signoro? And from the point of fun, where I am crying to arrive you at, they are on all four as foible-minded as you can feel they are fable-bodied. My hearers will recoil with a great leisure how at the outbreak, before trespassing on the space question, where even Michelangelines have fooled to dread, I proved to myself, as to your satisfaction, how his abject all through the quick quid of Professor Ciondolone's too frequently hypothecated Bettlermensch is nothing so much more than a mere cash dime, however genteel he may want ours, if we please. I'm speaking to us in the second person. For to this graded intellectual's dime is cash, and the cash system, you must not be allowed to forget that this is all contained, I mean the system in the dog marks of Origin on Spurios, means that I cannot now have or not have a piece of cheaps in your pocket at the same time and with the same manners as you can now not half or half the cheek apiece I've in mind, unless Burrus and Cassius have not, or not have simultaneously entangled themselves, sell dear to sold there, once in the dreary days of by and by. Burrus, let us like to imagine, is a genuine prime, the real choice, full of natural grace, the mildest of milkstoffs, yet unbeaten as a ricicide, and of course obsoletely unadulterous, whereat Cassius is obversely the revise of him, and in fact not an ideal choose by any meals, though the better man of the two is meltingly addicted to the more casual side of the rivaliste case. And let me say it at once, as zealous over him as is passably he. The same home and history, Seeks and Hydepence, which we used to be reading for our pre-purgatory, hot shot, till Duddy shot the shopper up, and Muti, poor Muti, brought us our poor suppy. Ah, who, how, Inacetius and Oleosus and Celius Volitalis and Petrus Papricus, our old party quite united round the slat bowel at Commons, far Salamos himself, and that sprog of a Peter Sill and his sprig of thyme and a dozen of the Murphy buds, and a score and more of the hot young Cappels and Latucia in her green sleeves, and you too, and me three, twinsome bibs but handsome eights, like Shakespeare and eggs. But there's many a split betwixt bowl and jowl, and, snob screwing that cork shot, to understand this as well as you can, feeling how backward you are in your down-to-the-ground benches, I have completed the following arrangement for the coarse use of stools, and if I don't make away with you, I'm beyond Caesar out nullist. The older Caesars, tyrants, regicide is too good for you, become unbearable from age. The compositor of the farce of destiny, however, makes a thumpledrum mistake by letting off this pianoforte effect as his first act, as that is where the juke comes in. Having been sort of nine-knived and truly removed, this soldier author Batman, for all his common Toryism, is just another of those soft-sized bubbles who never quite got the Sandhurst out of his eyes, so that the champagne he draws for us is as flop as a plankrieg. The twin Freer tripes are billed to make their reappearance as the new neck and knife knickknocks on the deserted Champ de Bouteille. A most cursory reading into the Persic Aurelian's hostelry shows us how Phenomenagula picked up that proper numen out of a collection of prefixes, though to the permeating connoisseur, the Cucuzian offspring of this son of a cuck is as satin as a tub in Tobolsk. Ostiac della Vogel Marina. But that I deny the fact of wanton to waste point, I could paint you to that butter. Cheese it, if you had some wash. Mordvi alive. Oh, me no nonsense. Why the case is as inessive and impulsive as Kesem hands. Their interlocutive is conprovocative, just as every hazy hates to having a has-been in his nose. Cassius may bethink himself as a thought of a cavalier, but Boris has the richly rounded head that goes best with thought-thinking defensive fideism. He has the lack of wisdom under every dent in his laughter, while the other fellow is very milky indeed me, laughing over the linnets and weeping off the union. He hasn't the hay, og, he listened to lug, pooh-hoo. And each night, sim Mrs. Mand, he winks he had the same again. It was aptly and corrigidly stated, and it is royally needless for one ex ungue leonem to say by whom, that his seeing-craft was that clarity as were the whole borough of Portersburg to be overlaunched over him, pitch black, he could still make out with his oxtrich the green mote in Ireland's eye. Let me sell you the full truth of Boris when he wore a yunker. Here it is, and charming too, in 6x7s, a cleanly lined by the gods, a king off duty and a jaw forever. And what a cheery, ripe outlook, God help me, Deus be Deus. If I were to speak my whole mouthful to Aaronim about it, you could call me the ormuzd aliment in your midst of fame. Eat ye up, heat ye up, sings the Soman in the Psalm. Butrium et melcomedet ut siat reprobare malum et elegere honum. This, of course, also explains why we were taught to play in the childhood. Der Hanschli ist ein Butterbrot, mein Butterbrot, und Cobre ist ein stinkend hot, ja, ja, ja. This, in fact, just to show you, is Cassius, the brother Scotch, or poor Tyron, a hole or two, the high stinks of Forfelt, and any go prigging worms. Cheese you complain, and hi, must say you are not wholly in the wrong. Thus we cannot escape our likes and mislikes, exiles or ambushers, beggar and neighbor, and this is where the dime show advertisers advance the temporal relief plea. Let us be tolerant of antipathies. Next, quovis burro num fit mer Cassius. I am not hereby giving my final endorsement to the learned ignorance of the Cusanus philosophism, in which old Nicholas pegs it down that the smart are the spin of the top, the sound or the span of the bottom. What the worthy old auberginist ought to have meant was, the more stolidly immobile in space appears to me the bottom, which is presented to use in time by the top, primo mobilis, etc. And I shall be misunderstood if understood to give an unconditional sine quam to the hemicized furiboots of the Nolanist theory, or at any rate of that substrate of apart from his theory, where the Theophil swears that on principle he was the pointing star of his odios by comparison, and that whilst eggs will fall, cheapened all over, the walled, the bure will be dear on the brie. Now, while I am not out now to be taken up as unintentionally recommending the Silkbjorg Tyron Dynamon machine for the more economical electrolysis of these amboid pates, till I can find space to look into it myself a little more closely, first I shall go on with my decisions after having shown to you in good time how both products of our social stomach, the excellent Dr. Burrowman, I noticed, by the way, from his emended food theory, has been carefully digesting the very wholesome criticism I helped him to in my Princeps edition, which is also munched to the cud, are mutually polarized, the incompatibility of any delusional acting as ambivalent to the fixation of his pivotism. Positing as above, two males pools, the one the picture of the other, and the umber the Scotia of the one, and looking wantingly around our undistributed middle between males, we feel we must wastefully want a female to focus. And on this stage, there pleasantly appears the country maid M, whom we shall often meet below, who introduces herself upon us at some precise hour, which we shall again agree to call absolute zero, or the babbling pump of Platonism. And so like that former son of a Kish who went up and out to found his farmer's ashes, we come down home gently on our own turned about asses to meet margarine. We now romp through a period of pure lyricism, of shame-bred music. Technologically, let me say, the appetizing entry of this subject on a full chest of vials is plumply putting the cart before their herbs, evidenced by such words in distress as, I cream for thee, sweet margarine, and the more hopeful, oh, margarina, oh, margarina, still in the bowl is left a lump of gold. Correspondents, by the way, will keep on asking me, but what is the correct garnish to serve dressines with? Tansy sauce, enough. The pawn-breaking pathos of the first of these shoddy pieces reveals it as a caseous effort. Burris's bit is often used for a toast. Crinoculture can tell us very precisely indeed how and why this particular streak of yellow silver first appeared on, not in, the bowel, that is to see, the human head, bald, black, bronze, brown, brindled, betrayed or blanc-manged, where it might be usually compared with an earwig on a full bottom. I am offering this to Signorina Cuticura, and I intend to take it up and bring it under the notice of Herr Harleen by way of diverting his attentions. Of course, the unskilled singer continues to pervert our wiser ears by subordinating the space element, that is to sing the aria, to the time factor, which ought to be killed il tempore. I should advise any unborn singer who may still be among my heeders to forget her temporal diaphragm at home, the best thing that could happen to it, and attack the roulade with a swift colpo de glotide to the lug. Though Mace, I will insist, was reclined from overdoing this, his recovery often being slow. And then, oh, on the third dead beat, Oh, to close her eyes and open her oath and see what spice I may send her. How? Cease thee, Cantraticky? I fain would be solo. Arouse thee, my valor, and save for e'er my troubadour. I shall have a word to say in a few yards about the acoustic and architectural management of the tone hall. But as ours is a vivarius where one plants breath as a lunger's planter's bison, and you may not care for argon, it will be very convenient for me for the emolument to pursue Burris and Cassius for a rung or two up their isoscellating biangle. Every admirer has seen my goulash of Marge. She is so like the sister you don't know, and they both dress alike, which I titled The Very Picture of a Needless Woman, which in the presence ornates our national cruet stand. This genre of portraiture of changes of mind in order to be truly Taurus should evoke the bush soul of females. So I'm leaving it to the experienced victim to complete the general suggestion by the mental addition of a wallopy bound, or should the zoological zealot prefer it, a kangaroo teal. The hat boxes, which composed Ramba, Lady Trabazond, Marge in her excelsis, also comprised the climactogram up which B and C may fondly be imagined ascending, and are suggestive of gentlemen's spring modes, these modes carrying us back to the superimposed clay layers of Eocene and Pleistocene formation, and the gradual morphological changes in our body politic, which Professor Ebahi Ahuri of Philadelphia, Illinois, whose blue butter bust I have just given his coup de grace to, neatly names a boîte à surprise. The boxes, if I may break the subject gently, are worth about 4 pence per box, but I am inventing a more patent process, foolproof and pyre perfect. I should like to ask that Sherlock Holmes person who is out for removing the roofs of our criminal classics by what deductio ad domunum he hopes de tacto to detect anything, unless he happens of himself, movibile tectu, to have a slate off, after which they can be reduced to a fragment of their true crust by even the youngest of Margies, if she will take please to be sated and smile, if I please. Now, there can be no question about it either, that I, having done as much, have quite got the size of that demilitary young female, we will continue to call her Marge, whose types may be met with in any public garden, wearing a very dressy affair known as an Ethel of instep length, and with a real fur, reduced to 3 9, and muffin cap to tone. They are angel skin this fall. Ostentatiously hemming apologetically over the shirtiness of some sweet garment when she is not sitting on all the free benches avidly reading about it, but evidently on the lookout for him, or so thrilled about the breast desk dolly pram and beautiful elbow competition, or at the movies swallowing sobs and blowing biscuits over Child Chaplin's latest, or on the verge of the gutter with some bobbled hair, brief-frocked baby ma's toddler. The Smythe-Smice now keep 2 domestics and aspire to 3 male ones, a shover, a butt-legger, and a secretary, held hostage at arm's length, teaching his infant majesty how to make waters worse. I am closely watching Master Pules, as I have reason to suspect from my post that her little man is a secondary school teacher under the boards of education, a voted disciple of Infantulus, who is being utilized thus publicly by the seducent Infanta to conceal her own more masculine personality by flaunting frivolous finery over men's inside clothes. So for the femininity of that totamular will always lack the musculink of a verum virum. My solutions for the proper parturience of mates and the education of micturious mites must stand over from the moment till I tackle this tickler hussy for occupying my attentions. Margarina, she's very fond of Burris, but a lick and a lack, she very fond of Chi. The important influence exercised on everything by this East Asian import has not been till now fully flavored, though we can comfortably taste it in this case. I shall come back for a little more say farther on. A Cleopatrician in her own right, she at once complicates the position while Burrus and Cassius are contending for her mystery by implicating herself with an elusive Antonius, a wop, who would appear to hug a personal interest in refined cheese of all shades at the same time as he wags an antimine art of being rude like the boor. This Antonius Burrus Cassius group triad may be said to equate the qualis equivalent with the older so-called talus on talus, one just as quantly as in the hyperchemical economonticarchy, the tantum ergons illuminate the quantum urge, so that eggs is to weigh as way is to zeed, like your golf child's Abe Boob caddy. And this is why any simple Philadelphus of a fool you like to dress, an Athamestude Jutonian, X-legged Patricite, may be awfully green to one side of him and fruitfully blue on the other, which will not screen him, however, from appealing to my grope-searching eyes. Through the strongholds of my acropole, as a boosted, blasted, bleating, blatant, bloating, blasphemous idiot who cannot tell a bomb from a pineapple when he steals one, and not sing his salmon with the Kong and our congregational pompons with the canting crew. No, topsman to your tarpia. This thing, Mr. Abbey, is Nathand. And taking off soot stuffs and alkalic matters, I hope we can kill time to reach the salt, because some force glass nutric acid's bittering in the saltpeter for you to plump your potards in. The thundering legion has stormed Olymp that it end. 12 tabular times till now have I addicted it. Meris genius to Carius Cassius, moritur te salutat, my Femus Themis race is run, so let democracy take the hindmost. Abraham Trippier, those old diligences are quite out of date. Read next answer. I'll beat you, Solon. Big-tempered, why not take direct action? See previous reply. My unchanging word is sacred. The word is my wife, to expounce and expound, to vend and to venerate, and may the curlews crown our nuptials, till breath us depart. Amen. Beware what you change with my years. Be as young as your grandmother. The ring man in the wrong shop, but the right words by the road o'er. Ubi lingua non cupisat ibi fas, adversus hostem semper sac. She that will not feel my full moon, let her peal to thee as the hoyden and the impudent. That man that hath no Moses in his soul, nor is not awed by conquest of words law, who never with himself was fed, and leaves his soil to lave his head, when his hopes and his high lows from whisking his woe, if he came to my preach, a pride purse-broken ranger, when the heavens were willing the spite of their spout, to beg for a bite in our bark noise danger, would meself and MacJeffet four in hand foot him out? Aye, were he my own breast brother, my doubled with love and my single biased hate, were we bred by the same fire and signed with the same salt, had we tapped from the same master and rabbed the same till, were we tucked in the one bed and bit by the one flea, homo gallant and hemi cap noise, Bum and dingo, Jack by churl, though it broke my heart to pray it, still I'd fear I'd hate to say. 12. Sacer esto? Answer. Seamus sumus.